Hello everyone, welcome to Paint Along with Darcy. Today we are going to be working on the Hello Sunflower. So this one was inspired by one of my dear friend and customer, Diana. Diana sent me a picture of a beautiful purple sunflowerish type looking flower. It was done on a piece of wood or a palette, and I thought that was really neat. My sunflower today is going to be this traditional yellow sunflower, but this flower you can make any color you want. So you can make it in the reds or pinks or blues or purples, orange. You could do anything you want with this flower. White, you could turn it into a daisy type thing with a yellow center. So basically, this is just a very basic flower shape, and you can make it say or do anything you want. I was gonna have the word smile on mine, and then I changed it to hello. I just want to show you how I have this pattern for you, and I'm sorry it's backwards on the camera there. Maybe I should turn around. Ooh, now it's right. And this gives you a good idea of how I cut out the pattern too. So I cut it out, yet I left, whoops, I'm sorry. I left some little connector parts to keep my word in whole. Otherwise, this whole center would be gone if I didn't leave that little connector in there. Same thing with the E. Same thing with the different L shapes there, and with the O, I left in some connectors. So what we'll have to do is freehand some of those connector spots, but that's not too hard to do. Once you get the basic shape in there, you just pretty much connect the line up. So it's not too hard. And then this is our sunflower. You know, and I was thinking it could go this way too. I'm gonna have mine go up and down, but really you could go like this, kind of like a sun, like a sunrise type thing. And I wanted to show you in this too how I cut out. I pretty much cut along the line of the petal that was on top. So this petal's on top of this one, so I cut along this line. This petal is on top of that one, so I cut along this line. And so our whole shape is there, but we can get in and get some of those real basic lines drawn in just by lifting up the petal and tracing around the one above or below it. So that's how we're going to do this today, and we're just going to go ahead and get started. The paints and supplies that I used will be in the discussion section of the event. So if you click on the event and go to discussion and then scroll down, you'll find a list of supplies there. So, and also if you haven't gotten your patterns from me, make sure that you do contact me and let me know that you need the pattern. This particular class is going to be part of our BOGO customer appreciation. So there'll be 3 different paintings you can choose from with your BOGO. So basically buy one, get one free. And I'll give you more details on the event itself as to how to get your free one. So let's go ahead and get started. Today I am using Deco Art paints. Those are my favorite paints to use. Excuse me. For mine, I'm going to go with this Bahama Blue. I'm going to do kind of a wash on my board. I did get a board. This board, sorry. This board is approximately 11 to 11.5 inches wide. I think when, as an original cut, it was 12 inches wide, but then when they planed it, it got smaller, of course. It's just a nice chunk of wood. This one's pretty thick. I actually have, these are from my stair risers. So I have wood left over outside. And as you can see, this one has a really nice grain to it, but I'm actually going to paint on this side because I love those knots and the little imperfections in the board. So I'm going to use that to my advantage today. and paint on that knotty side. So you're kind of going to decide whether you want your knot at the top or the bottom. So let me go ahead and move you down here so we can take a look at what I'm doing. So I have to decide with my pattern whether I want my knot on the bottom or on the top. The word hello I thought would go in right there. I can peek, that really shows up still really well. I think I'm going to keep the knot at the bottom. So, I'm so sorry, I got a frog in my throat. So I'm going to start off Bahama Blue. That's my background I'm going to use. And I'm going to do a wash because I want this grain to show. I really love it when, you can still see the grains in the woods. I think why use wood if you're not like excited about the different natural beautiness of the wood. I'm also going to use primary yellow today. I might throw a little metallic gold in there. We will see, maybe not. This is the only folk art paint I'm using today. It's yellow ochre. For some reason, I can't find that color in the Deco Art brand. So I do have this yellow ochre from Folk Art. I have black and white Deco Art. I also have burnt umber. It's a very dark, deep chocolate brown. And burnt sienna, which is kind of a reddish brown color. So let's go ahead and get started. The brushes I've picked out today are my standard 3/4 inch wide flat brush. And then I have this little, it's a number 6 flat brush, comparing size-wise. You see that? And then I do have a little round brush. I'm not sure if I will use that today, but I do have it just in case. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Now this first part, to do a wash, you pick whatever color you want. I think this would be pretty in greens, in blues. It would be pretty just on the wood itself. If you don't want to add any color to it whatsoever, feel free just to do on the natural wood. I know the painting that Diana sent me was done just on the natural wood. They didn't have any other background. And the purple really showed up nicely on there. But because I'm doing a yellow sunflower and my board is kind of a brownish yellow hue, I want to bring in some other color. So here we go. It's just going to take a little bit of paint, not much at all. So I'm just getting a little dab of paint. Oh, by the way, you will also want a hair dryer, and you will want a water cup, and you'll want some paper towel. So right now we're going to go ahead and get this, use my big brush, and I'm going to get this pretty watery, this here paint. So you can see I added a lot of water to that. And remember guys, whenever we are mixing, we always go off to the edge of our puddle. We don't have to go right in. So I want this like really drippy, very, very thin. It's just pretty much painty water is what it is. And I'm going to go ahead and start just applying that to this board. Now see how you can see the grain right through? And I'm going to start on this outside edge and work my way this way because my flower's on this side. So I want this, this edge here to be quite blue. Isn't that pretty? Now because this is wood, it might soak it in pretty good. I don't know. I am not sure. But if I get too much paint on here, I could always come after it with a little sandpaper, and that would help to lift off some of that paint too. Now see right there, I might decide just to take a damp paper towel and lift some of this paint off because I do really like that knot showing up there. See that? So you can lift a little paint off. kind of like that. Maybe I'm gonna let some of that brown show where it's pretty. Maybe I'm not gonna cover this whole thing. I don't have to worry about the center because that's pretty much gonna be covered with our sunflower. But I just wanted to, yeah, you know what, guys? I am gonna do that. I kind of like that. What do you think? So we have a little blue happening here on the edge. And I'm just kind of letting it fade into this area. I want to keep some of this. I like that. So I'm going to go ahead and add some more up here. But I kind of like some of this wood showing with some of these knots in it. That's kind of fun. So again, you can take your paper towel and wipe off any excess. Just a damp paper towel. So do you see how I did that? Cover your whole board if you want to, but I really liked some of this knots in here. So I wanted to see what it would look like if I left a little bit of that. I'm gonna get this wet and take even more of that paint off right there. Cool. All right, now that's all that is. It has to do there. I'm thinking that I'm gonna end up wrapping my flower around to this edge over here. So I'm gonna go ahead and put a little turquoise on this edge too. Because I think I want my flower to wrap right around the edge of my board. Neat. And again, you can wipe a little bit of that off with your paper towel. Okay. It looks nice. Do you see that there, guys? Can I show you how I did that? So I just got my outside edges with that blue. Ooh, pretty. So do I want to do that to this side? Why not, huh? I like this blue. I think it's pretty. Just gonna go ahead and cover this whole side here. It's not, this side doesn't have like any fun, neat markings on it, so I'm just gonna go ahead and do a light wash. And again, a wash is just watering down your paint so that you can see the grain of the wood through it. So it's just super watery paint. And basically you're just giving your piece of wood a nice coat. Now if I wanted to, I could come in once this is dry with a little bit of sandpaper and kind of sand my edges and kind of make it rustic and rough looking. Isn't that fun? I like it. I like it. Okay. There we go. All right. No problem. Okay, I'm gonna pause the video here, and I'm gonna dry this before we move on. Because this is wood, we want to make sure it's super dry so that whatever we do next isn't gonna bleed. We want some nice crisp edges. So, hang on, we'll be right back. Okay, we're back. I adjusted the camera a little bit, so hopefully you can see it just a little bit better. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and tape down our pattern. You can use masking tape for this. You don't have to use painter's tape. I just happen to have a lot of this painter's tape on hand, so that is what I'm using. And you'll want to roll it, stick it kind of in the middle so that you can lift up your petals as you're going around. I put like 3 down here. Ta-da! And I'm going to center this right along the edge. Put it up just a little bit, like so. Go ahead and tape it down. Okay, so I debated whether I wanted to use a Sharpie for this, and that would be fine. You could do that if you want to, but just know that your flower is going to have, your petals will have a black edge to them. I'm not sure I want to do that, so I'm just going to use a pencil. Hopefully I will still be able to see, but I wanted you to see how I'm going to do this. I'm going to go around the entire outside of my flower first. So I'm sure that I have these shapes exactly where I want them to be. I'm going to hold that down, go all the way around the outside. I don't have to be super careful because more than likely I'm not a person who paints inside the line very well. So this is just kind of a suggestion to me of where these petals are laying. And basically what I love about this particular pattern is that it's kind of wonky. It's not these perfect asymmetrical shaped petals that look more like a cookie than like a natural real flower. So this is to help me to be more free-flowing, loosey-goosey, however you want to describe that. Not to be so perfect. I find that I like my art a lot better if it has a little wonkiness to it. So I think because, you know, things in nature, in life, they're not always perfect. Even if you look at the center of a flower, everything grows out from that center. But sometimes the center is just off, just a little bit. Maybe that's the Lord telling us we don't have to be perfect all the time. We can be just off, just a little bit. Oh, and it's still beautiful. Sometimes more so. Now this is one of those little weird petals that kind of came out like this. And I will have to draw this around here and just kind of continue on with our design. Same on this side. Maybe there's another petal coming up off, kind of like that. Kind of pull this around to this side here. Okay, so if you can see how I tried to sort of wrap that around. It's not perfect. I'll go with it more when we start the actual painting part itself. Okay, now I can lift up this petal, see that? And I can trace this line. Okay, and I can trace this line. Isn't that not cool? Now I will lift up this petal and I can trace this line. And I can lift up this petal. Now this line, you kind of have to freehand, it just kind of continued on like that. But I can trace this side. lift up this petal and I can trace this one. Isn't that cool? I just think that's so neat how we can, you know, just cut a little bit and still have our complete pattern. Now this petal we want to continue down like this, but now I can trace this side. You can go way up into here and get this little edge, whoop, just like that. I'm going to pull this one up, and this petal continued like this, but there is this one on top. Okay, I'm going to lift this one up. See, didn't I just make life simpler for you guys? You can just trace your trace your flower edges. And you know, if you cover both sides of your pattern like I did with packaging tape, it makes it so simple. It gives your pattern a little bit more stability, and it makes it easier to cut. Now this one might be a little tricky for you. So we need to freehand in this little edge right there. So I'm just gonna kind of follow this other shape and bring it down. It's just kind of a petal hiding in there. I'm gonna trace this edge. Okay, now this little petal guy, he came up like this little curve. And this one has a little curve coming down like that. And I don't know if I will always see those. When I go to paint it, might not, I don't know. But here we go. This one goes here, and this petal continues on in here. This one just continues this way, and I'm just gonna wrap him. He continues on sort of like this and just wraps in here like that. So now, in theory, I should have, there. So there's all of our petals drawn in. And now that I think about it, I might have to redo that because I'm gonna do the background. Maybe not, maybe we could figure it out. So what I want to do, I'm gonna keep this pattern right here so that when I paint, I can see which petal's on the top, which petal is underneath. So I'm gonna start with this dark color here and kind of work in the center in some of these dark areas. So like right along in here, and I'm gonna fill in this whole center. Do I wanna do that now? Let's see, let me think. Maybe I'll start with this one. Let's start with yellow ochre. Yellow ochre is kind of like our darker petal color. We'll get a healthy amount out. I'm gonna wash out my water because I don't want my sunflower to have this blue hue to it. So always want to make sure you wash your brushes really good. And now I am going to start with my smaller flat brush. So we want to get, every time you use a brush, you want to get it wet first, dab it off onto your paper towel, and go ahead and load with paint. And when I load with paint, I load off to the side like this. And these flat brushes, you could load both sides and you get a little bit more paint loaded onto your brush. All right, so let's see. Let's go ahead and start painting our petals. So I'm gonna get the bottom petals for sure, or the petals that are underneath the other ones. I want to get them laid in here. Okay, if I'm careful, I can kind of see my pencil lines. I can always go in and refresh them up a little bit, but I'm just going to paint this whole image right now with this yellow ochre. This is the Folk Art yellow ochre. Let me get this petal in here. If I have to redraw my lines, I'm okay with doing that. Sometimes you just have to go with the flow, see what happens. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Now, if you're getting a piece of wood from somewhere, you could do this on a palette, a pre-made palette. But if you want to save some dough, you can go to like Home Depot or Menards and ask them to, you could purchase a board, and I think it's like, I want to say like $8 for a whole big board. It might be more than that now. I'm not sure. Like I said, this was in my garage, so I didn't have to go buy anything right now. Anyway, usually they will do like Home Depot or Menards will do one cut for free on your board. So if you bought a 8-foot board, you can get it cut in half for free. And then, because I think this is like 30 inches, I will have the dimensions that I used out on that discussion part of the page. But I'm kind of sad. I think this is going to cover up all my pretty wood that I left, but that's okay. Kind of just have to go with the flow. Anyway, they will do one cut generally for free, and then I don't know how much it is, if it's $5 for every additional cut that they'll do, or if you have a handy person at your house, or maybe you're handy yourself, you can just cut it yourself too. So say you were a whole family wanting to do this painting, you guys could just get one board and share it that way. Keeps the cost low, and painting on wood is a little different than painting on a canvas. Wood soaks in the paint, so you maybe will go through more paint than you would have if it was on a canvas. There's just something fun about painting on wood or other materials other than just a canvas. Like, I know that this paint is feeling really dry right away. And you notice my paint strokes, I'm trying to follow the way the petal would go. So instead of just up and down or back and forth, I'm actually following the lines that the petal would go. Just because that, if you get any ridges in your paint, they kind of help with that look. You know, most flowers don't have completely smooth petals. They have little ridges in them. So if your stroke follows the curvature of the petal and you have little brush strokes left behind, it kind of looks neat. So we're just going to continue on here. We're going to cover this whole thing with yellow paint. I'm going to go ahead and pause the video because it's boring to sit here and watch me color in this image with this yellow paint. So I'll be back shortly. Thanks. Okay, so we're back. So I have painted in the entire image with Folk Art Yellow Ochre. I even wrapped my flower around the edge. I put my pattern back down and retraced around the leaf edges or the petal edges, including in, I added in some of these little lines. So the petal comes wider and then into kind of almost a point as it connects up to the seed pod area. So I kind of drew in some of those just so that I had a visual right there. So kind of like the inside of the petal, or where it's like tucked under another petal. Kind of using some of that darker mustardy color that we made. Now when I'm doing these strokes, I'm using this brush, not the flat way to get a wide stroke, but I'm using it the narrow way. And that's how you get kind of a darker and lighter, you know, I'm not going to be afraid of this. I'm just going to go for this here. If I have to draw my lines again, so be it. But just kind of want to work in some little shading here. So especially where it connects up to the seed pod, we want that darker. We want to draw in some of these veins here. Like here, see where this petal is underneath the other one? We want to come in and make that just a little bit darker. We're not going to cover the whole petal. We're just making that shaded area feel a little darker, and we can draw in some veins. So whenever you reload your brush, start towards the seed pod and start working up, because your paint is fresh there, and we want to be able to have like kind of almost a dry brush stroke as we move up. I'm going to mix up a little bit more of that. Now I got a lot of that. Oh, looks like I've got to get a little bit darker. Okay, that's better. Remember when you're making your strokes to follow the vein of the flower, how the petals actually grow there. So that if you get any streaks left, like ridges from your paint strokes, and these petals that are tucked in underneath, we're going to give them a nice generous shade of this. Especially up here where it's connecting up to the seed pod. And my paint is feeling a little sticky, especially this Folk Art is there. That's better. So if your paint starts to feel a little sticky, that means you've got to add a little water to it, kind kind of is the nature of that folk art paint. It's just a little thicker paint. So you want to add a little water to it, because as soon as it gets sticky, it doesn't want to flow nice. It doesn't want to glide. And let's not forget these under petals here. So I'm just kind of doing quick strokes, trying to concentrate on following the curvature. Okay, let's see, what do we think? Get some nice dark areas in here. We want to have some contrast, so we want to have some dark areas, so when we add our brighter colors, they're going to really show up. And it gives our flower a little depth. Okay, I'm gonna rinse that out. And now this, I know this is gonna seem redundant, but now I'm gonna come back in just with the yellow ochre, not with that brown. And I am gonna add a little bit of water to this because my yellow ochre is really thick. And I want it to have a nice flow to it, not be like paste. All right, so now with this yellow ochre, I'm gonna come in kind of midway and I'm gonna pull my strokes down into the center. And again, I'm keeping my brush up and down instead of flat vertical. So I'm gonna go along my petal edge and I would pull that in. Pull it in, come along the petal edge, kind of really define those petal edges and pull it in. We'll add a little bit to this edge here. I'm just gonna pull gently down into that shaded area. Same thing here, gently pull down into that shaded area. See that? I'm going to come along this edge here, gently pull down into that shaded area. And as I'm getting into the shaded area, I'm lifting my brush off, so I'm getting more of a defined stroke there. Okay. Pulling that down into that shaded area. Kind of just redefining those petals, strengthening our edges of our petals and leaving that dark in place where we want it to be. Just kind of strengthening that edge. We want each petal to have its own definition. So that's kind of why we're doing this. Now this is just the yellow ochre. We haven't even brought in our bright yellows yet. So this is really gonna come to life once we get those bright yellows in there. This is still our darkest yellow. I'm just redefining my edges, making sure, I have a little goober there, making sure that I can tell what is what here. The paint is goobery. Nice smooth strokes, guys. We want to just smooth her on up. That's looking nice so far. Now this is good practice to practice your strokes. We're pulling down into that, pulling down. Because then when we start adding the brighter colors, you'll already have it defined and kind of know what your brush stroke is going to look like. And this is what I call an underpainting, so you don't really see much of it. It's there, it makes a difference, but as far as the overall painting goes, your eye will focus on the brighter colors. Okay. All right, I am liking that. Now I'm rinsing out my brush, and we are going to go with this burnt umber. We want quite a bit of it because we're going to cover the whole center with this burnt umber. So I washed my brush out, and here we go. We're going to define kind of our edge. And don't be afraid to have it be, we don't want a perfect circle here. We want it kind of an uneven little, little blobby edge circle. Already starting to take shape. See that? Bring it right around. bit so you can see it a little better. So I'm going to keep working around my edge. And we're going to end up filling in this whole thing. But you notice I'm not making my brush strokes side to side or up and down. I am following the curvature, just kind of almost scrubbing it in. The curvature of this seed pod. Following it around. We're going to do the whole thing. What I want to make sure is that I don't leave any yellow spots. So I'm going to look over this. I don't mind seeing all these little swirly brush strokes, but I don't want to see any bright yellow in the center here. All right, I've got that filled in, just kind of like a mushy mess. And I think from here, as long as my brush is not overloaded with this color, I'm going to pull in some like this. I'm going to just pull that up into my petals a little bit here and there. Coming out from this. So I'm just stroking up into my petal area with this. Reload a little bit. I don't want it super saturated. Again, I'm just pulling up into my petals, just kind of redefining that area that's hooked right onto my seed pod. Remember, wood is, it soaks up a lot of paint. All right. All right. Now, we need to dry this. So I'm going to pause and then we will dry. If I can pause. Up to the seed pod area. So I kind of drew in some of those just so that I had a visual right there. So now we're going to start with enhancing these petals a little more. I think what I want to do is add a little of this burnt umber to my yellow ochre just to make it a little touch darker. So really, I'm just going to do a little bit at a time. So I got my brush wet, wiped it off the paper towel, and I do have a little ochre there. I'm going to put a little bit more in. We might come back and do some gold highlights too with this metallic. I'm just going to kind of wait and see what I think. Maybe I want to keep it softer and not have a shine to it. So we'll just wait and see. Now, whenever you're adding a dark color to a light color, you want to just bring in little bits of the dark color. I mean, just a tiny little bit, And you want to start on the edge of your yellow ochre here. And what we're trying to do is make this yellow ochre just a shade darker, not a lot darker. Just we're going to subdue it down a little bit. Okay, I kind of like that. So kind of a, it's almost like a honey brown. You could get away with doing that too, using a honey brown. Now I want to come in here and I want to get some of these shade spots. So this would be, these would be the spots that are the petals that are underneath, or the area that's underneath. So I just want to come in here and get some of this shaded spots. You can actually pull some of this up into this petal here. See that? We're just going to be making some shading here. So kind of like the inside of the petal, or where it's like tucked under another petal. Kind of using some of that darker mustardy color that we made. Now when I'm doing these strokes, I'm using this brush, not the flat way to get a wide stroke, but I'm using it the narrow way. And that's how you get kind of a darker and lighter, you know, I'm not going to be afraid of this. I'm just going to go for this here. If I have to draw my lines again, so be it. But just kind of want to work in some little shading here. So especially where it connects up to the seed pod, we want that darker. We want to draw in some of these veins here. Like here, see where this petal is underneath the other one? We want to come in and make that just a little bit darker. We're not going to cover the whole petal. We're just making that shaded area feel a little darker, and we can draw in some veins. So whenever you reload your brush, start towards the seed pod and start working up, because your paint is fresh there, and we want to be able to have like kind of almost a dry brush stroke as we move up. I'm going to mix up a little bit more of that. Now I got a lot of that. Oh, looks like I've got to get a little bit darker. Okay, that's better. Remember when you're making your strokes to follow the vein of the flower, how the petals actually grow there. So that if you get any streaks left, like ridges from your paint strokes, and these petals that are tucked in underneath, we're going to get them a nice generous shade of this. especially up here where it's connecting up to the C pod. And my paint is feeling a little sticky, especially this folk art there. That's better. So if your paint starts to feel a little sticky, that means you've got to add a little water to it. Kind of is the nature of that folk art paint. It's just a little thicker paint. So you want to add a little water to it, because as soon as it gets sticky, it doesn't want to flow nice. It doesn't want to glide. And let's not forget these under petals here. So I'm just kind of doing quick strokes, trying to concentrate on following the curvature. Okay, let's see, what do we think? Get some nice dark areas in here. We want to have some contrast, so we want to have some dark areas, so when we add our brighter colors, they're going to really show up. And it gives our flower a little depth. Okay, I'm gonna rinse that out. And now this, I know this is gonna seem redundant, but now I'm gonna come back in just with the yellow ochre, not with that brown. And I am gonna add a little bit of water to this because my yellow ochre is really thick. And I want it to have a nice flow to it, not be like paste. All right, so now with this yellow ochre, I'm gonna come in kind of midway and I'm gonna pull my strokes down into the center. And again, I'm keeping my brush up and down instead of flat vertical. So I'm gonna go along my petal edge and I'm gonna pull that in. Pull it in, come along the petal edge, kind of really define those petal edges and pull it in. We'll add a little bit to this edge here. I'm just gonna pull gently down into that shaded area. Same thing here, gently pull down into that shaded area. See that? I'm going to come along this edge here, gently pull down into that shaded area. And as I'm getting into the shaded area, I'm lifting my brush off, so I'm getting more of a defined stroke there. Okay. Pulling that down into that shaded area. Kind of just redefining those petals, strengthening our edges of our petals and leaving that dark in place where we want it to be. Just kind of strengthening that edge. We want each petal to have its own definition. So that's kind of why we're doing this. Now this is just the yellow ochre. We haven't even brought in our bright yellows yet. So this is really gonna come to life once we get those bright yellows in there. This is still our darkest yellow. I'm just redefining my edges, making sure, I have a little goober there, making sure that I can tell what is what here. The paint is goobery. Nice smooth strokes, guys. We want to just smooth her on up. That's looking nice so far. Now this is good practice to practice your strokes. We're pulling down into that, pulling down. Because then when we start adding the brighter colors, you'll already have it defined and kind of know what your brush stroke is going to look like. And this is what I call an underpainting, so you don't really see much of it. It's there, it makes a difference, but as far as the overall painting goes, your eye will focus on the brighter colors. Okay. All right, I am liking that. Now I'm rinsing out my brush, and we are going to go with this burnt umber. We want quite a bit of it because we're going to cover the whole center with this burnt umber. So I washed my brush out, and here we go. We're going to define kind of our edge. And don't be afraid to have it be, we don't want a perfect circle here. We want it kind of an uneven little, little blobby edge circle. Already starting to take shape. See that? Bring it right around. little bit so you can see it a little better. So I'm going to keep working around my edge. And we're going to end up filling in this whole thing. But you notice I'm not making my brush strokes side to side or up and down. I am following the curvature, just kind of almost scrubbing it in. The curvature of this seed pod. Following it around. I'm going to do the whole thing. What I want to make sure is that I don't leave any yellow spots. So I'm going to look over this. I don't mind seeing all these little swirly brush strokes, but I don't want to see any bright yellow in the center here. All right, I've got that filled in, just kind of like a mushy mess. And I think from here, as long as my brush is not overloaded with this color, I'm going to pull in some like this. I'm going to just pull that up into my petals a little bit here and there. Just coming out from this. So I'm just stroking up into my petal area. This. Reload a little bit. I don't want it super saturated. Again, I'm just pulling up into my petals, just kind of redefining that area that's hooked right onto my seed pod. Remember, wood is, it soaks up a lot of paint. All right. All right. Now, we need to dry this. Okay, we're back. This is actually going to be the third part of this video. So we've gotten our background is done. We have our image in. We have our background colors in, and now for the fun part. This is where it starts to get really pretty, where we start adding these really bright colors and building up our contrast even more. So at this point, if you have not washed your brush or gotten fresh water, go ahead and pause the video and get yourself some fresh water and your brush really nice and clean, because we're going to start working in some bright yellows. So here we go. Oops. Okay. So we have our clean water, clean brush. We have a good start on our flower here. Now let's go ahead and go right to our primary yellow. And remember, whenever you use paints, you want to shake them up a little bit. Sometimes they separate. My paints always have these blobs on them. So I'm going to get myself a nice little amount of yellow here, And I'm going to grab some white too. The problem with my primary yellow is that it can be see-through, and I want to make it more solid. So I'm going to add a little white to my yellow, because white, you cannot see through white. White is pretty heavy paint. And so I want to keep this bright yellow color, but I want to mix a little of this white in here so it can adhere better. We'll get more of a solid yellow than a see-through yellow. Sometimes a see-through yellow is nice, but in this case, we want a nice bright yellow. So I'm going to mix up a goodly amount here. And you can see that this yellow I've just mixed is nearly the same color as this darker yellow here. Later on, we're going to get really pale with it, but for now, this looks great. Okay, so I have a nice amount of yellow here. And my brush is heavily saturated. So as long as it's that way, let's go ahead. I'm going to start right in the center. Ooh, look, that's really bright. Cool. I'm actually going to get a little of this off. I don't want my brush so saturated. I want to have more of a defined. Okay. So we're going to come right in here, and I'm just going to really work on we want to work on the petals that are on top of the other petals. So I'm just going to come in here and I am going to brighten this guy up. I'm going to really work on the edges of his petals, make them nice and crisp. And I want to definitely define him. He is so pretty. I will leave some of this darker showing, but I'm definitely going to brighten up this whole petal here. And again, I'm going to do long strokes so that if it gets veiny looking, now that's the difference of working with wood. See how it's soaking that in? Okay, and see how I'm following nice long strokes? Now this edge of this petal is on top of this one. But it's still underneath up here, so it's going to be a little tricky. So I always want to start on the edge that's on top. Pull that in. That's pretty. Isn't that pretty? Okay, ugh, I'm getting my brush very saturated. I don't like that. You know what, I'm going to rinse out my brush, because sometimes if you get paint too close, if you get paint way up into this metal part of your brush, it pushes your bristles apart, so you're not going to get a nice fine stroke. So you want to really wash that out when that happens. Wash it out really good. And then come back in and grab your paint and concentrate more on the end of your brush instead of getting way up into that metal part. See that? All right, I know this one is on top. So we really want to concentrate right now on the petals that are lying on top of other petals. We want to get those defined here. It might take a couple coats of this bright yellow to get it to the brightness that we want. Now you're going to find that this flower, some of the petals are on top of some and then under its neighboring petal. So when you're painting away, keep that in mind to be checking on that to see. See, this one's on top right here, but then it kind of goes underneath these other ones. So try to have fun with this. You would think doing a flower is super easy, and it should be, but then you get all these little layers in here and you're like, wow, there's way more going on with this flower than I realized. I'm kind of liking some of the muted colors that we have going on in here. Whenever your brush gets too saturated, go ahead and take a break and rinse it out. And then pick up some more color. Yeah, it might take a couple layers. Just hitting some of these little back ones as kind of a little highlight. And then these petals that are on top, We definitely want to get them bright. So this is what we're just going to keep doing. We're going to keep building with brighter and brighter colors. Following the stroke of that flower. Remember, nice long strokes. That's what we want. Nice long strokes. I check my time. My video only likes to be 30 minutes and 11 seconds. If I go any longer than that, it cuts it into another video. So I kind of missed that. I got to painting and didn't see that it was getting pretty long. And that's what happened there. So. You know, you guys don't have to use my patterns if you don't want to. You can freehand your flower. You can, you know, use a more, I almost debated of doing a super simple line drawing, very basic, simple little flower. But when I saw this one, I thought, oh gosh, that is so pretty with its little wonky leaves. So I wanted to try to do this one. It's coming though, isn't it? It's looking nice. I just did a Starry Night painting, and part of me wants to kind of embrace all those little wonky strokes and that we did on that one to make this guy just a lot of fun little brush strokes instead of these long lines. And definitely could do that. Could very well do that. Okay, we've got our first layer of brighter colors in. And now I am going to, just going to go ahead and rinse my brush out again. Let's go ahead and pause this. Oops, I'm sorry, I keep bunking into this. Let's go ahead and pause this and give it a quick dry. Okay, so we've dried this now and it's ready to accept some more paint. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna make this yellow, even a paler color. So this is going to be like a lot of white and a little bit of yellow. So I want there to be a definite tonal difference between this yellow we just used and our new kind of buttery yellow. Okay, see that? Tonally, there's a big difference between this yellow and this really buttery yellow. Okay. Okay, we got a good batch of it. I'm going to wash out my brush. Again, we want to wash out our brushes after we mix paint because that paint gets way down into that metal bracket of our brush and it pushes our bristles apart. So we want to get it nice and clean and let our bristles go back together again. Now I'm going to pick up some of that new yellow and let's see what it does. Oh, fun. I'm not going to cover everything with this new yellow, but I'm definitely going to get some of these edges in here. I'm going to pull it down. Especially the petals that are on top. I want to brighten those petals that are on top. And I want to just kind of stop almost midway if I can. This is kind of like where the light is really catching these petals. Just a little bit. See how that's defining that what's on the top? So I'm defining that edge that's on the top. This is on the top, this edge. Now if this is getting too pale for my taste, I can always come back in with some of this bright yellow and without the white in it, because remember it's kind of clear, and I can make this look more yellow just by doing it that way. Sometimes I like a nice pale kind of define some of that. See, I'm going back over some of these because it just gets that much brighter. So it certainly does soak up. Just going to add just a tiny bit here and there. I don't really love that. I'm going to smear it out a little bit. Okay. All right, what do you guys think? We can just keep playing with this. It feels like forever, doesn't it? All right. I am going to come back in with my yellow and pulse. Yeah, that's cool. So I'm coming in with it kind of thick and blobby. Some of you might like the pale yellow to take over sort of thing. But I like the bright yellow too. I don't want to lose that. So I still want to keep some of my that white yellow in there, but I'm just coming back in with my true yellow, my primary yellow, and adding that back in on top of my white yellow. Does that make sense? Just kind of, it's just a give and take of don't want to have too much of a good thing, I guess, huh? Just a little playful banter back and forth. Now I'm just putting in kind of like, if you want to call it pinstriping, more of the little veins. They're just a long stroke with your brush going the vertical way. Soon this will be done, but you see I'm trying to add those veins back in. So I don't want my petals looking one-dimensional or flat. Okay, I like that. See where we're at here. Okay, we're gonna stop this here and we'll dry, and now we're gonna work on our center again. Okay, here we are back with video 4. We're gonna work on the center of our flower now. We've dried it, so we don't have to worry about smearing what we had already done. I kind of love it. It looks nice. We are going to really deepen up the center now and really bring in some contrast, make that yellow really pop, because we're going to darken down the center. Okay, here we go. I can't even remember how to unlock this thing. Here we go. All right. Okay. So we already have our base of this burnt umber, really dark, dark brown. We are going to darken that up even more with some black. So I still have some burnt umber on my palette. I'm going to add a little black to it. And remember, when you add black to anything, a little bit goes a long, long ways. So wash out our brush, and by the way, every time I stop the video, I'm replacing my water with fresh water and rinsing out my brush. So, but apparently I'm forgetting to wash my hands, but that's okay. So I'm just gonna pick up a tiny bit of this black, and I'm gonna start mixing off to the side here. I want a definite tonal difference. I don't want it to be completely black, but I do want deep, think of dark chocolate. Oh, that really good dark chocolate color. That's what I'm looking for here. So looks like we have that right now. So I can tell the difference between my original brown and my dark brown and the black. I don't know if you can tell that on the camera, but this chocolate brown, this deep, deep, dark chocolate brown. All right, we are going to start with our edge. We're just going to define up our edge a little bit here. And remember, we don't want it to be a complete circle. We want there to be some little bumps in there, some interesting character. But we're going to go around the edge of this painting. And we're really going to embrace the wonky. I don't want it to look like a complete circle. We're going to go all the way around the edge, and we're going to pull that in just a little bit. I'm going to pull it in. I'm pulling it in about half an inch, okay? So I'm going to go all the way around this edge. And I'm going to pull that in about a half inch. I'm going to bring this really dark color in here. Okay. So we have that kind of halo around, and now I'm going to do the very center. I think I'm going to go straight black with the very center. Yeah, that looks cool. And you see, I'm not doing a fancy little circle. I'm just kind of mushing it. Mushy, 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 mushy. All the way around the center. Okay. And now I am going to do more of this chocolate brown. And I'm just going to kind of dab it in here. Now I'm just twisting my brush here and there so that I can get different blob shapes. And I'm going to go all the way around. Might have to mix up some more of this dark chocolate brown here. Dark chocolate brown. And I want to get some nice little blobs in here. Now see, I'm not completely covering up. Let me lift that up. I'm not completely covering up our base. We're just making blobs, okay? From our very black center, I'm going over that edge just slightly, and I'm pulling it back out. We want some of that light still showing. We're still working with that really dark chocolate brown that we mixed up, that we did our edge with, our little halo edge. And we're just blobbing it around here. So we're going from the halo edge all the way to our black center with blobs. Blob, blob, blob. I feel like I did not get this very nicely That's better. Okay. Okay. Now we're going to dry this. So I'm going to pause so we can dry. Okay, we're back. We've finished drying. Now I've decided, since I dried it, that I want to take some of that deep dark chocolate that we did, and I'm just going to pull up here and there. So you see what's happening? It's defining that even more. These little edges. You've already got that lighter brown in there. And this is just gonna deepen those shadows just a little bit. Good enough. Okay, now I'm going to rinse this out, and I'm going to come in with burnt sienna. So it's a red brown. So again, we've got a clean brush. We're gonna load in some of that burnt sienna, and we're just gonna make little blobs. And we're not gonna go all the way out. We're gonna stay in this kind of muddled ring that we have here. But I am turning my brush here and there, and it's getting almost that seed shape when I plop it down. And I want them to look scattered. So I'm going all the way around the edge, or that ring part. And you can do this as much or as little as you want. We're just adding to that that look of chaos there in this like little ring area around. Now we're gonna keep going with this. We're not done. So we're gonna add a little bit more, and we're gonna concentrate even more in this. Think of a donut. So we're building up the edges of our donut, and these are the sprinkles on our donut. So I'm going to pause quick and dry this because I really love this color and I want to keep it there. So here we go. Okay, so we're back. I've dried everything, and this is what we've got going on so far. We're kind of making a donut shape, highlights, little sprinkles on the center here. So I am going to go ahead and I think what I want to do is add some black to this outer edge. So let's see how that looks. I'm going to load up some black, and I'm going to add some black sprinkles to this outer edge. So remember, I'm twisting my brush different angles so that when I plop it down, I'm getting a different look there. All right, I kind of like that. That's fun. And our center is still completely black, right in the middle. It's completely black. We want to make sure that that stays that way. Just makes it look so much like it's really deep there. Okay, Now we'll go ahead and rinse out our brush because we don't need to dry this right now because we're gonna leave that outside edge alone with these other colors that we're gonna bring in. We're gonna do a little bit of the yellow ochre. So I do have some of that on my palette already, but it gets really dry fast. So I'm gonna go ahead and just squirt out a little bit of extra yellow ochre. I am loading up my clean brush. And now we're gonna concentrate just kind of in the middle of this little donut area and kind of like the very highlight top part. So we have these different hues of colors. And remember, we're just kind of going around. Oh gosh, you guys, I hope you can see how really cute this is. Different angles. You just want to come at it all kind of wonky ways. And again, you can do as many or as little as you feel like doing because these sunflowers are so full of seeds. Just have fun with it. This is lovely. I love it. Okay. Okay, so if you can see, we stayed kind of like right to the inside of that donut shape. So right around there. So the burnt sienna is going out farther. Do you see that? It's cool. All right. Now, I am going to dry this again, so I'll pause the video. All right, we've dried, and I went ahead and got clean water again because I'm going to bring a little of this bright blue in there. I know that's weird to think of having Bahama blue seeds in your sunflower, but it'll be just the right interest and contrast. We could throw a little orange in there if we wanted to, but I think with that, with this burnt sienna, that adds enough of the red look. So let's go ahead and get some of this Bahama blue and just a tiny bit. We're not going to do much at all. Just a little bit with our clean brush. And we're just going to blob in some seed shapes here. Just random. And that's it. Okay. Now, this painting could be done. You could be totally done right now. It's gorgeous. I love it. All you'd have to do is sign it. But for fun, I have this little hello. And I'm going to put this in here. I was going to do it right here, but I really love this leaf. So I'm thinking, maybe I'll do it up at the top. Kind of a little hello up at the top. I actually really love that idea. Okay, so for this next part, if you want to do the hello, you will need a little sponge. And you'll need your pattern. And I have doggy hair on mine, because it blew off onto the floor. And I might, let's see, I might fold this over a little bit because I want to be able to have a really straight edge to it, and I have a really hard time of lining things up and making it straight. So I'm going to put a little tape on here. Let me move this. off to the side a little bit. So we're going to tape this down. So I'm going to put some tape on the edge of my board, on the upper edge. So pretty. This is exciting. I love it. All right, now I'm gonna have to move this, guys, so that I can see it centered, and then I'll move it back so that you can see it. I just gotta make sure that I have this kind of centered on my board and lined up right along my edge so that it's straight. Do I have it straight? Does that even look straight? I think the word hello is a little crooked. It is. Ugh. Okay, so it didn't print off on my printer real straight. I'll have to eyeball it a little bit. No, I don't have it completely straight on here. This is trickier, guys. Trickier. Oh my goodness. Let's try this again. I'm gonna just cut this. I gotta be able to see what I'm doing, right? Let's cut it this way. Okay. Let me get myself some fresh tape because maybe I won't use tape at all. In fact, maybe I'll just stick it on there like that. And tape it down. Tape it down. Okay, does that look straight? Lucy, you're okay. It's so hard to see, to tell. Yes, Lou, you're okay, Lucy. She heard me thunking. Okay. Okay. Because I'm anal, you guys, I'm gonna go get my ruler. This is when being a perfectionist is kind of a stinky trait to have, but I did pretty good. Look. Yeah, I did pretty good with that. Okay, so my paper's wonky. It's still making my brain feel like that's wonky, but we're gonna go for it. Okay, so I really have a mess there, so I'm just gonna grab a paper plate. To get some black. I'm gonna do my hello in black. I think that will pop really well and show up nicely on here. So we're gonna get out a little black. I'm gonna use this sponge, okay? So I've got it taped down. I'm gonna put it so you can see it. And I am gonna hang on to like push some of these parts down when I'm doing this too. And also I want you to see how I'm gonna load the sponge. Okay, so I just dipped it in my puddle, but now I'm gonna pounce it off to the side because I don't want there to be very much paint on. This is almost like a dry brushing technique. Okay, so I'm gonna start just pouncing now. I'm gonna be careful not get it up on this edge. This is why it's nice to make your own stencil. Oop, I gotta be careful. Get a little bit more. Pounce it in. It'll take a few layers to get this perfect. And I'm not using much pressure. I'm just dabbing up and down, up and down. Dab, 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 dab. This generally takes more patience than what I have. I'm terrible about doing stencils. I just hate how much time it takes to do it. And I'm always tempted to peek and see if it's doing anything. I'm always tempted to use more paint than you need to because I just want it to be done faster. And it's just kind of, it just is what it is, you guys. It just takes time, but it's really worth it. If you find out you're getting a lot of paint out, be real gentle and barely put any pressure. You can freehand your hello too. You don't have to do this whole stencil thing. I just don't trust my handwriting or my spelling for that matter. And this is the easiest way for me to know that it's going to look fairly decent. It's just kind of creating a stencil. Oops, I'm sorry. I bumped the camera. Some of you that have watched me and painted with me have used like a Cricut or a, you know, those personal cutting type machine like things to do their words. I have a Silhouette, and that would work nicely too to probably make a stencil. I've just got mine all packed away, so it's just as easy, instead of digging it all out, to just cut my own with the scissors. Now I am going to have to take a brush, probably that little tiny brush, and add the connectors, like the inside of the E, or the round loop part of the E, and I'm going to have to connect back up the little parts of the L and the O, but that's not hard to do once you get this part in. Just try to be patient. It'll be worth it in the end. Almost there. Okay, I'm gonna peek. Yeah, that looks good. Sweet! Look at that, isn't that cute? All right, I'm gonna quick wash out my brush and then we'll come back and add in these lines. So I'm gonna pause you for a sec, okay? Okay, we're back. I've dried this, it's completely dry. I'm gonna use my little tiny round brush now and dipping it in the water. I'm not going to wipe it off on the paper towel because I'm gonna add a little moisture to this black. I just wanna make it so it's less clumpy and flow is nice. So a little moisture to my black. Okay, that looks good. Now I'm going to rinse out my brush because I've really gotten that black down deep into middle part of the brush, and I want my bristles to be able to stay together really nice. So now I'm just gonna dip my clean brush. I'm just gonna pick up a little bit of that black paint that we added a tiny bit of water to, just to make it flow nice. And I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna just fill in these lines. So kind of where it connects up, just kind of smooshes up like that. It comes around, kind of thinner at the top. Okay. Okay, and this E, it just kind of, the H comes up like this, and it almost comes like right straight around like that. You can kind of follow that. And any part that you think it needs to be darker, just go ahead and darken up those lines a little bit. Like I think I want this E to be just slightly rounder on the top there. There we go, that looks better. Sweet! And now with this L, it just comes up like this. So I'm just darkening this up a little bit with my brush, and it helps me to think about the flow of the word or flow of the letter, and it just comes around like that. And if your paint doesn't want to flow nice, that means you got to add a little bit of water to it. It should glide. And remember this, the wood really soaks in the paint, so you might have to do that more often. Right around like that. And here this E, it connects up just like that. It's just like you draw this line up, right up into it like so. This is too adorable. I like it. I hope you guys have fun doing this too. I hope I didn't have my head in the way the whole time. I'm so sorry. I'm trying to see what I'm doing here. Okay, and this E, it comes around like this. I'll have to check the video now and see if I had my head in the way. Ah! When you're being your own cameraman, it's tricky. It's just a little tricky. Okay, now this O comes around like this, swoops around, swooping. It just comes around like so, I think. I could be totally wrong. Looks like I was wrong. Oh well, I'm just making it do however I want it to do. Good enough. Oh, I remember what happens. These little round brushes, you kind of have to roll them on your paper towel to get them back into the shape that they need to be. think I totally did that wrong. I think this is supposed to come out this way. Pooh! Pooh berries! There we go. Just gonna fill that in, pretend like I was supposed to do that. And no one will even know. It'll be our little secret. There. Okay. Well, that's a wrap, you guys. That is a wrap. All right, I hope you enjoyed. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.